Okay, Jeff Durkin with We Are Change CT out here in Ferguson, Missouri, outside the police department. We're here with former Philadelphia Police Chief Captain Ray Lewis, who has been very vocal against the police brutality and police militarization that has been occurring the past few years or so, and decades also. From your experiences, Ray, you've been here a couple times in Ferguson as well, and meeting with the protesters and dialoguing with people. What's been your overall reaction to what you've seen here on the ground from your perspective?
Well, the overall reaction is people are totally frustrated with getting screwed by the system, the establishment, and in this case, the police department. The fact that Officer Wilson case was sent over to a grand jury instead of immediately to a trial told me all I needed to know, that this was going to be covered up. The initial investigation by the police after Officer Wilson killed Michael Brown Jr., I could see was a cover-up. That's what made me come out of here in August for 10 days. I never thought I'd come back. I thought it was so obvious what happened that this would go to trial and he would be convicted of murder. When I found out that it was going to the grand jury and the little leaks that were coming out, I said, you know what, this guy is going to skate. And I said, I'll have to go out again. So now I'm out here again for 10 days to try to bring attention to the fact that this whole grand jury was a fraud, totally fraud. And let me tell you specifically one of the things, and there's a number of things, but the jury was handed a law. The assistant district attorney handed everyone a photocopy of a law that was in place prior to 1985. In 1985, the U.S. Supreme Court overruled it and said this is no longer the law. That law was this, that a police officer has the right to shoot and kill a fleeing suspect, not an individual who they know committed a felony, but just a suspect who was never even tried or had a hearing. Well, what happened was this exploded when a police officer shot a man in the back who was running after he spit on the officer. Supreme Court said we can't have that. That law is over. Well, what happened then was that was no longer the law. The assistant district attorney for the attorney McCulloch, and he's in charge of whatever gets given out. He knows what the assistants are doing. He allowed copies of that old law that was disbanded years ago, 1985, to be handed out to the jurors. And that is total, on that ground alone, this should be investigated and he should be tried now, Officer Wilson.
And I was also down here in August covering it briefly for a few days and seeing the way the police have just amped up with military gear, and this is no surprise to you and also to myself of how this has been building up over decades and decades with several programs that have been in place, because this case really opened up the aspects of worldwide, showing how the police tend to have become more armored, have become with more weapons and more gear. And from your experience being in the Philadelphia Police, what was your main reason for speaking out and then eventually resigning and, you know, becoming civilly disobedient in with this action?
No, I did not speak out while I was on the police force. I was not aware of all this. Okay, I was somewhat brainwashed myself. It was when I retired and could do a lot more reading and studying that I became aware of just how prevalent this abuse is by the 1%. I was not aware of the corruption of the super rich in this country. Now, the super rich had a real awakening with the Occupy movement when I and thousands of others surrounded the New York Stock Exchange. They saw that uprising of Occupy. They also saw uprisings happening in other foreign countries. The super rich in this country, the 1%, they said, whoa, that could happen again, even on a bigger scale. We have to be ready for that. Now, if it happens again, they don't want to bring in the military to squash it, because then middle-class America, they are going to say, whoa, bringing in the military? Yeah. We're not going for that. But, so what do? They have incidents like this. Now what happens? White America in cities and towns across this country are begging for military equipment to come to their police departments. So the 1%, they got exactly what they wanted. They don't have to force police departments to take military equipment. Police departments don't have to plead to their communities to allow them to have military equipment. Yep. The communities are going to insist they have military equipment to protect them from the black animals that riot. And that's the only pictures the media shows of black people rioting, black people burning. They did not show all the black people that had the blue sweatshirts and the white lettering across saying Peacekeeper, who were in front of these buildings risking their lives trying to keep the peace. No. The 1% doesn't want to show that, because that would make people think, well, maybe they are decent black people. Now, 1% wants the white, blacks, minorities, and whites to be fighting each other, because when we're fighting each other, guess what? We're not looking and fighting them.
And also important, just one last question here about advice for if people currently as officers now because mainly the reason the system allows to work is because of the cops doing their job, following orders and being compartmentalized and refusing to do these orders. So what can they do to basically refuse and say, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to fire on peaceful protesters, I'm not going to do this? What's your take and advice with that aspect?
Yeah, well, that's another reason they're militarizing the police. You ever see these get-ups they got now? They're military equipment. From the top of their head to the bottom of their feet, they are decked out in such a barrier that they no longer connect to the community. And when you don't connect to the community, and when you feel so isolated from them, it's much easier to shoot on them. You have a sense that you are an occupying soldier in an occupied land. And we all know the atrocities that our occupying soldiers have committed in foreign countries.
And just one more thing, I think it's also interesting to show just how it's really brought an eye to this. Ferguson, the world attention on Ferguson and how it could really bring out such good change in police reform and that aspects. And I think that's also encouraging in a way of just the different aspects of it and just anything else you'd like to add from your thoughts on that.
This has not brought about any whatsoever consciousness in America for police change. Who's going to change police in this country is white America. White America. Your rich 1% media owners have accomplished what they want to. All they're showing is the rioting and looting. White media refuses to interview me. Okay, CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC have adamantly refused to interview me, even at the request of some Ferguson residents. They don't want a white cop reaching out to white America. And unless you reach out to white America, you can forget any reform. Not only will white America won't be complacent in it, they will be aggressively anti any reform to the police, because they see that as hindering the police and stopping the blacks.
And also the other aspects what you mentioned with that of not uniting, and said the establishment wants us divide and conquering to fight with each other, white versus black, etc. When you see people coming together on these issues like this, it really shows where the media doesn't want to show that, because and it shows where people that are pro-military or pro-police militarization, etc., they use it on the marginalized communities to justify that and say, oh, we have to use that, otherwise it'd be violence or anything like that. So it kind of shows where, like with the Patriot Act, etc., stuff like that. Just your thoughts overall on that.
Yeah, like I said, this is all about the super rich. It's not about one police officer shooting a black man, although they're glad it happened, and they made sure it came out this way, that Darren Wilson would get off, and it would cause a lot of problems between the white and blacks. They're reveling in Ferguson, because what are their news companies showing? Nothing. But I saw that Michael Brown Jr.'s stepfather up on a car saying, burn this place down, burn it. I must have seen that 100 times. I must have seen the looting, the same fires, the same looting 100 times. Did the news go into the history of the oppression by police? Did they go into any history of police brutality? And did you hear one time that Darren Wilson came from a police department that was so racist that the city or town, I'm not sure what it was, disbanded the entire police department because it was so racist? So where's Darren Wilson get a job with Ferguson? Ferguson had a history of racism. Did you hear? I mean, come on. If you show 24-hour news of burning and looting and Michael Brown Jr.'s stepfather, you can show 5 minutes of the reason perhaps they're upset. They didn't. In fact, they refused. When residents requested CNN, NBC, Fox and whatnot interview Captain Lewis, one individual said, we even want the whole world to know Captain Lewis is here. They said no. Not that these individuals did not make that decision. That decision was made by higher-ups. So they squashed any type of communication to white America. White America allows the super rich to get away with their dirty deeds.
Absolutely. Well, really appreciate your great work and spreading awareness about this. Keep up the good fight. Oh, did you find him?
Oh, there he is. Look, he's flashing. I love it. All right, well, now that he's flashing.
You know me.
Don't flash. Oh, no, he's flashing us. Yeah. Look. Do you see a light? Do you see a light?
There's this pop culture idea of the trial in America, that the trial is the place where justice is done, where two equal sides battle it out to find the truth. And this is such bullshit. Anyone who has been in a court for any amount of time realizes